Welcome back to In Studio, and I'm joined now by Geoff Marriott, who is the author of 3 fictional detective novels, and we're going to talk about your latest one, which is The Devil's Portrait. These stories, from what I've heard from the people who've read them, are so compelling, but so is your story. So I'd like to start with your story. You are you were a 20-year serving police officer for Ontario Provincial Police.
That's correct.
And I'd like to hear about that part of your life and how that sort of motivated you to become an author.
Well, when I started with the Ontario Provincial Police, I started in uniform, much like everyone else. And then eventually it moved into detective work after 10 years. And then from detective work, I moved into the intelligence field in Toronto. And then from there, undercover work, basically on organized crime figures and the mob throughout Ontario and Upper New York. And then after 20 years, I'd had enough and decided, move on and do something different. And I guess it was from that it just planted the seed to write about, and these books are fiction and they have in no way any bearing on what I was doing as a police officer, other than maybe channeling certain investigations, but changing them enough to, camouflage them from the real people.
So we can say loosely based on...
Loosely based is, yeah, that'll work. Absolutely.
So you went from working as a police officer to driving a big rig. That is
I did.
A very interesting choice.
I did.
So tell me how that happened.
I just wanted to break away from everything, an organized structure, such as the policing. And I always wanted to ride in a big truck. And I thought, well, why not? My motto is you only go around once, so let's do that. And I did, and I loved it. And it gave me time to reflect on a lot of things, but it also gave me the alone time to put things in my mind that I could translate into a book down the road. Yeah. So, it was beneficial.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, if that's when you found your inspiration.
It was, because I'd take a tape recorder with me, and when you're driving, through, say, Indiana or Michigan or wherever, you have a tape recorder, you're by yourself, you have thoughts. If you think of something that would be worthwhile for a novel, you just talk and then move on from that, and then just transcribe it when we got home. So is this when a dish served cold happened for you while you were driving the big rig? I'm trying to imagine all of this. It did, actually, because that was the last year I was doing that. And yeah, I tried to put different things in. I thought it would be a one-off. I just wanted to write a book. Yeah. So I put a variety of things in there, both from police procedure, the criminal aspect, the partnerships, how they work. And when it was done, it was received so well that people wanted a second book. So then it just escalated from that. So talk to me about who John Cooper is. John Cooper essentially is me. Okay. Personality-wise. I found that if I did things in the books the way I would do them, it was much easier to put into a book form, novel form, rather than trying to think, well, what would this character do? Or what would they do? What would I do? Okay. That way I didn't have to back up chapters or go ahead chapters thinking, well, what would he do here or there? I just followed my own instincts and it made it much easier. I thoroughly enjoyed the writing. It was probably the most relaxing time of my life. So, I mean, I've never been a police officer, and or seen the things that you have seen in your lifetime, but I'm trying to imagine writing this is probably in some sense therapeutic to you? It is. Yeah. It truly was. Because, like I said before, John Cooper and myself are one and the same person, and in book 2 especially, and bleeding into book 3, pardon the pun, but there was a PTSD element going on. Okay. And I could truthfully put that in the book, having experienced some of those things, and I can convey it truthfully, and there's no hesitation at all from me, and people can't challenge that. That's just the way it was, unfortunately. So you say that the bad guys, the criminals on the street, may not be your biggest enemies. What do you mean by that? Well, internal politics with police departments sometimes become a major issue. With bad guys, you know what they've done. You try and get them into court and then ultimately into jail. You run into stepping blocks, like in the police department, if someone has it out for you or for someone else, or they want to do a favor for someone, you're battling that scenario all the time. Mm-hmm. You go to the courts, as in book 2. That book 2 was predominantly about lawyers, judges, and such, cutting deals. Mm-hmm. So you see these violent people on the street. They get captured by the police. They should be going away for 20 to 30 years, when in fact what happens is they cut a deal, plead guilty for manslaughter or something like that, or a lesser crime, and then they get 5 to 10 years. That gets frustrating.
Yeah.
So, the bad guys, you know what to expect. It's the good guys you have to watch for. Mm-hmm.
So when I had asked you, do you think I could read these because, I have a wild imagination and gruesome would probably keep me up at night, you said that your audience is typically 30 to 60-year-old women, which surprised me. Did that surprise you?
It did surprise me. Mm-hmm. It did. And the books themselves, they're not graphic. The violence is in the books, told from a police officer's perspective. It's not writers do ride-alongs with police and then write a book about it. Well, it's a little different because they've got nothing invested in it. There's no fear element because they're well protected. They don't get taken to where the bad situations are. Police are a little different. I mean, they see a lot of things like you were saying, but this here it's gruesome only in the fact that when you read them, you'll know what the crime's about. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's gone through step by step as to what actually happened. Mm-hmm. So from that point of view, I've read books by female writers that make my knees weak.
Really?
Oh, this is Dr. Seuss compared to some of those.
I love it.
Yeah.
So we have just under 30 seconds left. Tell me what the future holds for John Cooper. Will there be another one in the series?
Well, I think John Cooper apparently is going to be in book 4
going.
somewhere. Yeah,
Nice.
Every time I write a book, I think, well, this might be the end. We'll venture off in a different direction. Somebody wants the next chapter of John Cooper's life.
And you can get the books in chapters?
Indigo has the books, the Book Express in Cambridge. The libraries have them. They're also available in ebook for every device.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being with me today. You can head to gsmarriottauthor.com for more information, and we'll see you after the break.